Hey Insiders, Patrick Huey on the podcast today, former International Spa Association chairman, global director of Wellbeing for Hyatt Hotels, and the acclaimed podcast host of At the Podium, a program that has, as of this episode, 185,000 subscribers. Now, today we're going to talk about something that Patrick is exceptional at. Storytelling. Specifically, how do you tell your spa's story effectively? What is the return on investment from doing so? And how do you leverage your story to create a truly differentiated position within a crowded market? We're going to get into all that and more on today's conversation. This man is an absolute wellspring of wisdom. Hope you guys enjoy.
Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot tell you how excited I am that you're on the podcast with us. I have so much respect for you.
Thank you. Congratulations. I know this is not easy to put together.
Well,
so congratulations.
Well, thank you. And you would know, not only are you heading up Wellbeing for Hyatt, one of the largest hospitality companies on the planet, but you're also an incredibly accomplished content creator. Your podcast, At the Podium, has had breakout success. I think you're at 72,000 subs on YouTube right now?
75. As of this morning, I was like, what?
That is impressive. One of the things that I've been struck by is your gift for storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And today I'd love to just explore that and how that intersects with your role in spa. And so to kick it off, could you tell me a little bit about the role that storytelling plays in a business, in a spa?
Everything is story. We're all trying to find a way to build an emotional connection to people in our businesses and our podcasts, no matter what that is. And the way that you connect to someone is story. Every single person here, every single person who could be a customer for you has a story, and they understand the power of story in their own lives. So if you can tell a compelling story, weave a story that's truthful, it allows entry points for people to connect with you and whatever it is you're trying to do. It helps people to understand also the things that are underneath that sometimes are revealed through story. And anytime you can have a person relate to you as a human, it makes the business side of it. I don't know if it makes it easier, but it gives you a baseline of where you are connecting with them on a real human to human level. And I think now more than ever, people look for that.
So when you're talking about story as a way of driving business, you're saying connecting to you. So is there a story for a business that doesn't anchor on a single person, on an individual? If I'm a day spa listening, right? And I'm thinking about my story, is it inherently about me, the owner, or my staff?
Yeah. I think it's always about the person. Whoever is that person who's built the business, who's the mind behind the business, I think it has to be somewhat about that person. Because they are the engine for it. If you think about it, in most businesses, even if they become these huge multinational crossing border companies, they normally start with one person who had a vision or who had an idea that other people bought into. And not every business is built like that, and I understand that, but there's usually a person at the center of it who's driving it to a certain degree. And I think it's very important for that person's story to be told and to be understood and to be believed in. Because people don't show up every day for stuff. And if they do, maybe that's not the person you want working for you. People show up because they feel an emotional connection to something. Otherwise, they'll just leave. I think it's really, really important to having other people believe in it and buy into it. You hear these people who are in skincare, who own skincare companies. I don't want to name names because there's some great ones here. But oftentimes you'll hear those founders had skincare issues or felt a certain way about because they had acne as a child, or they didn't feel beautiful because they had this happening on their skin, and they found something that helped them overcome that feeling. That's a very compelling story, because who hasn't felt that way about themselves? You could ask the most wealthy, famous person in the world, and they will have had moments where they're like, oh, I didn't feel great about myself. And so I found this thing, if I'm the skincare company, that helps me feel better about myself on the inside. That's reflected on my skin. That's a compelling story.
Creates a reason for being aside from, I want to take money.
Right. And you get people who believe in that story to work for you and to work with you. And that's how you hear companies talk about culture. It's interesting because once something becomes something, there's like a whole world built around it. I think a lot of it in the beginning is at least, I believe in your story. Your story resonates for me, so I belong here because I understand we're trying to help people feel better about themselves so that when they look in the mirror, they like what they see.
Interesting. So story doesn't just become a mechanism of customer acquisition. It becomes this way that you're galvanizing a group of people who care about the same stuff and
Absolutely.
resonate with it and driving a shared purpose.
And that should hopefully expand out into customers believing in buying your product. If you think about, you look at a car brand, I love cars. So if you look at a car brand, the story of BMW, it's very different than the story of Toyota. And it doesn't have to even necessarily be, I'm telling you a specific story, but the story tells me, what do I feel like when I sit behind the wheel of the car? What is the texture of the leather?
Mm-hmm.
That starts to tell you and inform the story that you're telling and the story that you want to tell about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
To me, story goes hand in hand with what is your intention.
Mm-hmm.
So like on my show, At the Podium, I set an intention with every guest that I work with who comes on the show, so that we're working towards the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if the intentions aren't aligned, I don't film the film.
Yeah. It doesn't match what you're trying to go for.
Yeah. And in the business side of it, you have to have both. You have to have the story and you have to have the evidence and the results, right? You just can't have a story. But the story becomes a thing that people can latch onto.
If you're a spa owner listening to this, and you're nodding your head, you're saying, okay, I get this. I feel like story is something that I need to create. How do we go about doing that?
You got to dig down into the thing that animates you about it. What made you want to open a spa? That's the story. What problem are you trying to solve? What thing are you trying to elevate? That's the story.
So you're not writing your story, you're peeling back. Why?
And at some point you may want to write it because it may help in terms of marketing and things like that. But opening your own business is so challenging and hard. And there's so many barriers for you to do that. So if you're going to do it, it has to mean something to you beyond just, oh, I'm going to make some money doing this. That can be enough, but the story has to be what animates you to want to do that, to go through all the headache, all the licensing, all of the getting loans from banks, begging family members for money. What is the thing that's making you do that? And it doesn't even have to be painful or complex. It has to be true to you. So you've said to me, you think that I'm a good storyteller, and part of that is because I trained as an actor.
Really?
Yeah, I have a master's in fine arts from the Yale Drama School, and it was part of my undergraduate studies.
Wow.
But that's all storytelling and understanding the human condition and what motivates people as humans.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you do your own analysis. As Marie Kondo says, what sparks joy for you? That's the story.
So we're basically saying story is something you need. It's not something you can manufacture. It has to be raw. It has to be authentic, or it'll be counterproductive. As someone is reflecting on this, what are the dimensions of a good story?
Well, it should be structured, a beginning, a middle, and an end. But I think a good story is a moment of change and awareness. I was on a path this way. I had a moment of clarity, a life event, something happened, and it changed my direction. And this happened as a result of that awakening or that awareness. That to me is where I was before, the pivot point, and where I am today because of that.
If I'm a business and I'm looking at, okay, I'm trying to shape this story, when you're carving away the extraneous elements, you're trying to drive towards something succinct.
Mm-hmm.
And so how succinct should a business owner be trying to get this? Is there a barometer they can look at and be like, okay, shoot, I'm not there yet?
It really is about what is telling the story that you want to tell. What is highlighting that? And if it's taking you off the track of that, then that maybe it shouldn't be in the story.
Are there one or two spas that you feel like just nail the storytelling dimension?
Oh, I'll tell you who did it in the beginning really well and really had an imprint on the industry with Aveda.
Oh, so tell me Aveda's story.
I don't remember all the details of Horse story, but it started with Horse. But it was this idea that we can marry ethical products, sustainability, and still have efficacious results in hair care and then eventually skin care. It doesn't have to be sacrificed because you're thinking about what you're putting in the bottle. You're thinking responsibly about your environment. You're thinking sustainably about the partners that you use. In the beginning, Aveda worked with lots of people in stressed parts of the world because they were putting resources back into those communities. And they were highlighting the artisans and the creators in those communities. 30 years ago, no one was doing that. And that's what really built the Aveda brand. And I know this because I worked for Aveda.
Oh.
So when I was brought in, I was told this story about what it was, why it was done that way, and who Horst was. And that's a perfect example of storytelling that's completely related to business, somewhat edited because you just can't talk forever, right? It has to be refined. But he changed how we think about hair care and skincare. Who was one of the pioneers of that movement. So that's a perfect example of what you're talking about, of a company that does it well. Every story is not going to have that kind of impact, but it will have the impact that you allow it to have in your community, in your business, in your customers, in your employees, your colleagues. So I think that's important.
Is a story something that has to be operationalized? Like you're talking about how Aveda had a mechanism to pour resources back into these communities.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, when they hear story, they think it's kind of a marketing blurb. And so do you think that story can exist, an effective story, where there's a conscious effort to interrogate that relative to the operations of the business?
You have to interrogate it, because then you're just a phony. Then it is just a marketing blurb, right? If you own a business, and I would say with my podcast, I'm a business owner, I interrogate and investigate every decision, because you have to, because it's you.
Where you're talking about the intention. If this person's intention doesn't align, then they are, to a degree, diluting my story.
Correct.
By me allowing that to come in.
Yeah. And you don't have to explain to people. It can just be, it's not a part of the story. And it doesn't mean that it's not valid. It's just not a part of this story. I've had the pleasure of working with lots of owner operators. I've worked for smaller companies before I worked in larger companies that were owned by a husband and a wife, or by a single person. That was a lot of my career. Every decision that they made was very much thought through, was not arbitrary. Because if it didn't ring true to what they were trying to do, they couldn't do it. Otherwise, you break faith with the people that were working for you, or that you were trying to have become your customer, your guest. It also depends on what level do you want to work to, right? Do you want to work to excellence, or do you just want to do it and get by and see what happens? Again, that's your choice. It's your life. You can do whatever you want to do. But especially today, people are incredibly savvy and smart. The consumer is. And they know if you're not being authentic. They know if you're just feeding them a line of something because it's on trend. This is why companies hate trends to a certain degree, because it feels like, oh, we're just jumping on a bandwagon because everyone's doing that.
So you could be in a place and authentically to have that as part of your story, and then suddenly it feels cynical and manufactured.
Unless you really own it in a way that makes sense for you.
Mm-hmm. So how do you navigate the trends dimension within Hyatt?
It's tough, right? So when we're evaluating a trend, we evaluate, does this make sense in the context of who we are as a business?
Mm-hmm.
Every business has to create those different things for themselves. And that helps understand, is this trend appropriate at this point in time? Is this trend relevant for us and how we do business? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. And sometimes it's yes, but it has to work in this kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the complexity. We've been talking storytelling very much up here,
Mm-hmm.
but then you've got to drill down into the details and those decisions that you have to make. But trends are tough. Trends are important because they tell you where the consumer is, because oftentimes the consumer drives trends. It also tells you what are people looking down the road and seeing. And then you have to, from a business lens, say, does this make sense for what we're trying to do? Or how can we make this work within our framework?
So if you're looking at trends and you don't have that lens of your own story, and that's not strong, then you're just like a leaf getting blown around in the wind.
You got to get into the why of it, because that tells you where the story is. And it doesn't have to be something tragic either.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are afraid to investigate because they're like, oh my gosh, this is really sad, or I can't do this anymore, which is great information to have. But the more you start to refine what that is and you get into it, I think the more effective you'll be as a business owner.
So after you kind of have that, what's the next step?
Test it out with a few people. Seriously, share it. What do people think and say? And also know that it's an iterative process. So it's not going to stay in one spot. As you grow and develop and understand your business and the business changes and the trends change and what people are looking for changes, your story will emerge and develop.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still the truth of you. It's like we are not static figures. So if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have had a different answer.
Mm-hmm. So there, what I'm hearing you say is, okay, you've got the story. What's important is expediting that feedback. It's not perfecting it. It's figuring out what resonates as quickly as you can. Is that with your customer? Is that with your team? Who is that with?
It's probably a combination. Your team is with it every day, so they can tell you if what you're thinking about works. There's so many feedback models that you have now where you can actually assess where the customer is, what they're doing within your business. They will give you feedback. People love to give feedback, right? And what I'm not saying is take everything you've done and throw it out the window. What I'm saying is take it and refine it.
Find that thread.
Find that thread that pulls it through. Because that could be a really defining moment for people. And not everything starts at the beginning, right? So oftentimes you could have things where you start the business because it feels right and you have a lot of immediate success or a lot of positive reinforcement on that. But then as you're in it, it starts to have a deeper resonance for you. It doesn't have to be ABC like that, you know? So if you've been in business for 20 years running a spa, you can still do it, right?
So I know we're approaching the end of our time together. I've got one thing I'm deeply curious about. Who has been the most impactful mentor in your life up to date?
I would say she's going to kill me. And I'm not just saying it because we're at iSpa right now, but Lynn McNeese, she's the president of iSpa, has been a very impactful mentor.
What
for
have you
me.
learned from her?
Talk last.
Could you expand on that?
Well, if you're the leader of a company, if you're a chairman, the minute you weigh in, you've closed the conversation. So when you're trying to build consensus or you're trying to run a building or run a business, build a business, let the people around the table weigh in first. Don't put your thumb on the scale.
Because otherwise you're going to get this homogenized groupthink.
And it just happens. It's not because people aren't independent thinkers. It just kind of happens. Once the person who's at the head of the table says, okay, this is what I think, it shuts down conversation. Don't let people know you're worrying so much was another big lesson.
Really?
Yeah. We're doing COVID. We were on Zoom a lot doing all this content. And she would sometimes text me and say, you're looking way too serious. Optics matter. Optics matter.
Is there a second mentor?
Besides Lynn?
Yeah.
Well, there's a woman, her name is Annie McCullough. She worked for Aveda. So when the company I worked for, which is a small company, transitioned into Aveda Spas, she was the business development person who worked with us. And over the years, the past 20 years, she taught me the business, how to read a P&L statement, the importance of retail, the importance of storytelling, because Divorce was all storytelling, Aveda storytelling.
Really? So she was the genesis of that for you.
Yeah. She taught me how to, she literally taught me how to read a P&L statement. Because I didn't have a business background. And so she was impactful, and she was always truthful, not in like some negative kind of way, but we could always speak truthfully beyond when we worked together. So she was a big person.
That's so cool. I see in my mind, I'm like, because I know you went to Yale. I thought you were a Yale MBA.
No.
And so I thought you came in like starched suit, knowing everything.
No.
So that's so cool that you came up and figured that out in the real environment. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, again, it's
Thank
been
you,
such
John.
a pleasure to talk with you today.
You were
I'm
great.
very grateful for your time. I'm just so grateful that
Thanks
you're willing
for
to
me.
share your wisdom with us.
Thank you.